Hello and welcome all of you to the 2024 Mains PYQ discussion by New IAS. In this video, the theme is Cholas and the question is a 15 marker from the GS1 paper of 2024. The question goes like this: though the great Cholas are no more, yet their name is still remembered with great pride because of their achievements in the domain of art and architecture. So the crux of the question is achievements in the domain of art and architecture, and the pretext of this question is the remembering or the legacy of the great Cholas. So we are addressing the question comprehensively, including the explicit as well as the implicit parts. Now let's see how to start this question. So we are dealing with a dynasty like the Cholas. So it's very important that we mark their time period, their region and their important kings. The time period of the great Cholas is from 9th to 13th centuries, and the region is the modern day Tamil Nadu with Tanjavur as their capital. We have inculcated a map here. Look at the Chola map that we have given here. In this is their core area where they had their absolute control, and this is the area where they had influence, or the Chola subordinate area. So Cholas are one dynasty that had influence outside the Indian subcontinent as well, into regions like Indonesia and Malaysia. So that's their legacy. So we've given that in the map as well, and we've given the trade route as well, because Cholas are known for an imperial navy as well. So we have given a map that includes all of this. If you can draw such a map in your answer, that will be a very good value addition. So that's it: the introduction, the time period, the geography, the map, and the important kings like Raja Raja Chola and Rajendra Chola. Now we are addressing this part of the question, which is the legacy of Cholas, the legacy that is still remembered with pride, as a flowchart here. There we are giving a few points where this legacy is still continued. One is through literature. We have given the example of Kalki's famous Ponniyin Selvan novel. Then movies like the same name that released recently based on the same text. Then we have still functional temples like the Brihadeshwara temple in Tanjavur. We have the Nataraja sculpture. The Nataraja sculpture has great relevance in India's dance tradition right now. So that's also part of the Chola legacy. And we have the UNESCO World Heritage status. So we'll give these 5 points as a flowchart to just address this part of the question, which is the first statement, and then we'll move to the core part. This is a 15 marker, and you have the leverage to have an implicit part like this. In the body part, we are dealing with two explicit parts, which is achievements in the domain of art and architecture. We have divided it accordingly, and we have given 6 points in the first part and 5 points in the second part. In the first part, when it comes to achievements in art, the first point will be in the domain of bronze sculptures itself. Here itself we have talked about the Nataraja sculpture, so we won't repeat it again. In terms of the bronze sculpture, we'll talk about the lost wax technique which the Cholas have mastered. So in the time period after the Cholas, this technique got further elaborated, but the peak of this technology came during the period of the Cholas. So we'll mark this as a first point. Then we'll come to the point of intricate carvings in temples. So this is an extension of their architecture, but we'll take it as a separate part of art, and intricate carvings will be kept as a point in the art domain, and the example would be the carvings in the Airavadeshwara temple at Dharasuram. So remember that everything that we have marked in yellow in this answer are essential keywords and examples for this answer. This will add your marks, this will act as value additions, so do remember to by heart these points. And we have made sure that every example is distinct. We are not repeating any example in this answer. Coming to the third point, which is the influence of Bhakti. So Cholas have inculcated Bhakti tradition, which is a cultural thing, into art as well. One example is the sculpture of Shiva in Golden Palace of Aditya Karikala. So they have embodied the spirit of Bhakti and translated it into art as well. Fourth is the patronage they have given to music as well as dance. Fifth is the contribution to Tamil literature. One example is the compilation of Tirumurai. Tirumurai is a Shaivite canonical text. Here we have talked about Bhakti. So Bhakti, as you know, evolved in South India in the form of Shiva Bhakt as well as Vishnu Bhakti. So Shiva Bhakti Bhakts were known as Nayanas and Vishnu Bhakts were known as Alvas. So it originated from there, and the period of Cholas have a great role to play in that. An extension of this can be seen in the literature as well in this example, where we talk about the Shaivite canonical text called Tirumurai. We can also give the example of Kamba Ramayanam here, which is a version of Ramayana that is popular in the south that got compiled during the time of Cholas. Finally, we are talking about the temple jewelry, which is an important element in the Chola temple architecture as well as the temple culture. We can say in a general, we can use the general term like Chola culture, and temple jewelry occupies an important position there. So that can also be included in their artistic contribution. So 6 points in the first part. Moving to the second part about architecture, we have dissected the contribution they have made to Chola architecture. First one is the peak of Dravidian art style. So Dravidian style can be traced back to the Pallavas time as well. So Pallavas was also a question in the GS1 paper of 2024, but Dravidian style reached its peak during the Chola time, and that is notable through the grandeur of their structures. Just take the case of the Brihadeshwar temple in Tanjavur. It's so huge that this reflects the peak of Dravidian style, and such structures are also reflective of the materials that the Cholas used. One example is the use of granite. So this was made popular by the Cholas. So that's a contribution they have made to architecture. Second point is the engineering marvels. So not just the artistic or the architectural sensibility, but also the engineering skills during the Chola time is very relevant. One example of that is the famous Vimana of the Brihadeshwara temple, which stands 200 feet tall. So that's the second point. And the third point is the development of temples as complexes. So rather than isolated structures, they have made temples as complexes which acted as cultural hubs. So the Gangaikonda Cholapuram, Rajendra Chola is known as Gangaikonda Cholan, and Gangaikonda Cholapuram is a temple complex which evolved as a cultural hub. So that's the third contribution. And the fourth one is functional architecture. So we can say this as religious as well as cultural architecture. We have functional architecture as well under the Chola times. And one example is the Kallanai Dam or the Grand Anicut in the Kaveri River. Finally, we have the urban planning of Cholas as a testimony to their architectural contributions. So on a whole, we have 5 points in the second, 6 points in the first, and we have given enough value additions to substantiate and to make this point more than generic. And finally, we'll conclude this with their legacy in the immediate successive periods. And we give the examples of Vijayanagara style as well as the Vesara style. Vesara style, you know, is a mixture of Dravidian as well as Nagara architecture, and this is influenced by the Chola legacy, and the Vijayanagara style as well, which peaked post the 10th century, is also influenced by the Chola style. So that's how we'll conclude that. The UNESCO heritage and all the other contemporary legacy we have already inculcated as a flowchart here. So that's the answer. This content would be enough for a 15 marker. Thank you for listening.